Hello and welcome to the first ever Pats Pals podcast. Eventually, when we build up our media empire, this will be the genesis. And thank you very much for being right at the very start. Or this will just completely crash and burn, a bit like the Patriots at some different points last season. Welcome into this podcast. This is a UK and Ireland and UK, whatever way you want to put it, New England Patriots show. My name is Shane Brennan.
And my name's Skye Pank.
And yes, we exist, Skye. It's funny. So just a little bit of background on who we are. We're both journalists / content creators. Which side of the line do you land on there, Skye? Journalist, content creator?
How long was it going to take for me to mention my age? Turning 34 soon. I think 10 years ago you'd go journalist, but you're an actual journalist. So maybe I'll just be I'll go content creator now.
Oh, so that gives us a little bit of balance. So yes, I am an actual journalist. I do work for a newspaper. I also do podcasting with the Irish NFL show. Skye has TikTok and Instagram and does some podcasting. We both covered Patriots games in Europe. We've both covered the recent Super Bowl. So I guess we're not complete bluffers. We're bluffers with jobs. I think that's the way that it is once
that's the way the world works now. That's 2025.
I guess that's the way it is when you are a content creator / journalist. And we met. I guess we'll talk a little bit about when we met. We met whilst covering the Patriots, and they played in Frankfurt against the Indianapolis Colts. So one of the worst games of American football I've ever witnessed. But since then, we've been very good friends. We're both fans of the New England Patriots, and we said, well, people have pen pals. Why can't we be Pats pals? We can get together, and this is more of an excuse for us to talk every week, but also to really dive in to some of the important things which is plaguing Pats Nation. So, Skye, how are you? How was your week? How are you feeling? We're in OTA season now, and we've decided, as the journalists and content creators we could have decided to launch this in draft week. Said, nah, that's too topical. Why would we launch it when people are actually interested? We could have decided to launch it on scheduled release week. It was like, nah, too topical. Too many people would be interested. We decided to pick one of the lowest, least interesting times of the season to launch. And here we are. Pats Pals finally exists.
It's because we know that most people who watch this are going to be fans of Cardi B. And obviously she's been talked about at the moment with Stefon Diggs. So it just tees up nicely. That's our target audience. That's what we go for. But my week's going well, mate. I mean, that's been the drama, right? He's been partying, but then he's turned up at OTAs. He's given it a little bit of everything. He's teaching the youngsters how to do it.
Yeah, it's once again, it's there's always something about entering the airspace of Miami which seems to do something to derail the Patriots in some way, as it has been when we've been playing on the field, but also for the case for Stefon Diggs, in case anybody hasn't seen that. We will be referring to that later on in the program. But Skye, as the elder statesman in this crew, I say, even though you don't look like you're, what do you say,
34 soon.
34,
September 12th.
You don't look like you're 34. But you are, so you've been a Patriots fan for longer than I am, as you've been on this earth for longer than I have been. I'm somewhere in my mid-20s. So yeah, give us a bit of background as to why it is the New England Patriots are your team.
I'm going to try to avoid the number 3 throughout all of our Pats Pals episodes, because I say it like an F and you're going to say it like a tur. So any American listeners are going to wonder what the hell we're talking about. But I guess the monologue of why I was a Patriots fan, I think I always reference Madden 04. That was the Michael Vick one. And I remember in school a few months prior, someone had bought an American football and they were like, oh, it's the Buccaneers v the Raiders. We were all like, what? Because obviously that was like the peak of Manchester United, Arsenal, whatever. And, we were sort of playing around. And I remember watching that game. I don't know how, but I just remember the Buccaneers destroying them. And then Madden 04 come out a few months later. A mate of mine bought it around. Would have been like PS2 back then. And I know Drake.
Oh, wow. The ancient text of the PlayStation 2.
I know. And I know Drake May caught some, you can tell me before, he caught some light-hearted flack for this. But when we were covering in London, he mentioned, didn't he, about, why should you support the Patriots? And he was like, oh, New England, England. But that was my reason, because at the time I would have been 12, 13, and it was between the World Cup 02 and Euro 04 where I dyed my hair with an England flag in school.
What?
So yeah,
you dyed your hair like an England flag. You were such a cliche.
Yeah. You can't do that in 2025, I'll tell you that. But
you will in World Cup 2026. I can almost guarantee it.
I'll do it in Miami, yeah. But it was kind of like, so I was like, oh, England, New England, why not? Let's go for it. Let's see what happens. And then, yeah, I guess now I kind of not embarrassed to say that, but that was the original reason. And then the Patriots won against the Panthers, the Super Bowl that year. Great game. I was trying to remember 32-29 off the top of my head. And as much as I remember from the seasons after, it was just essentially the 05 season. I remember we lost to the Broncos in the playoffs. That was actually the Patriots' first ever playoff loss under Brady and Belichick. They were 10-0 going into that game. I'm sure any old Patriots fans will be able to remember there was a controversial play where Ben Watson had chased down Champ Bailey on the interception, but the Denver still got to keep the ball because it sort of went through the pylon, and there was obviously big drama. Controversy that actually went against us for once, Shane. You know, we were actually robbed in that one. I know. Then we fast forward, obviously, to the 18-1 season. But the season I always reference, because I want to skip past the Giants, the season I always reference as to why I know that I'm a Patriots fan. I was so bought into that Matt Castle season. Like, you know, like our best player went down. We're 10-5. We missed the playoffs. But it was like, you know, I guess in the US, if you were an older Patriots fan, Brady was the fairy tale. But that was almost like a mini fairy tale for me. Like this backup guys coming in. Obviously, it was still an elite team. And I do always wonder what would have happened if we'd made the playoffs instead of the Dolphins. But yeah, that was kind of it. And then fell in love with Brady again when he had his long hair. Monday Night Football, he comes back with a knee brace, 2 touchdowns to Ben Watson. That was like a few days after my 18th birthday. And then that same season, I went to Wembley, and I was digging this out before coming on. I have, you ready? Patriots Buccaneers half and half scarf from October. Where
for those of us listening on audio, by the way, I'm in a much more boring room than Skye is. I'm sitting in my bedroom. The only Patriots thing I have on is obviously, other than my jersey, a cap which you can barely see. Whereas Skye is sitting in his living room. He has 4 jerseys behind him. The one he has on him and now a half and half scarf that he got in Wembley Stadium in
2009. So we're talking what? 16 years.
Was that the second NFL London game? Because the first one was Giants Dolphins the year beforehand. 2 teams I know you don't like, but the first year was Giants Dolphins in 08.
I think the Giants came to the London games the year that they beat us, or the year after. So 07 or 08.
It was in their Super Bowl year,
yeah. So the 07. So this was like 2 years after, and we won 35-7. Me and my dad sat at the back row of Wembley on like a concrete slab. It was freezing. I was just excited to see Brady. And then I got to do the Patriots Rams as a fan when Gronk did the Royal Guard celebration. And then, yeah, I feel like, you know, that was sort of like the early formative years of why you become a Patriots fan. And then we had the second dynasty, most exciting. My favorite is still the Seahawks win.
Yeah. That was actually, I'll get on to that was the first game of American football I watched, was that game. The first game that I watched from start to finish, I was kind of dipping my toes into it, and I saw that. I was like, I don't think I'll ever see anything as incredible as this again. But then 2 years later, of course, in Houston, the Patriots ended up doing something more incredible. But it's interesting, like, Jesus, it's funny to say that we've known each other for a couple of years, and I'd say 50% of our conversations with the Patriots is actually the first time I've asked you that question. I didn't know you were in such love with the Matt Castle year, because I feel like that, like even when you're watching like the Dynasty and all of the other, I read the book and all of the other nostalgia pieces about the Patriots years, and even when we consider, you know, current teams and how much they fall back when they lose their star quarterback, the Dolphins, and they don't have Tua. What would the Eagles be if Jalen Hurts was properly hurt again? God knows what would happen to the Chiefs without Patrick Mahomes. Yeah, we forget about how strong that team did. Just because they didn't make the playoffs, we still forget how strong that team was throughout that season when Tom Brady, the supposed, you know, be all and end all to your offense.
At that point, 3 rings. Do you know what I mean? It was a big deal to lose him. And admittedly, I feel like at that age, you're always like stubborn and wanting to prove a point. It was almost like, I'm going to learn every single other player on this roster just so no one can call me out for just being solely a Tom Brady fan. But yeah, it was obviously just like a great year. And that was the year that Favre was on the Jets. I'm pretty sure that was the drama year with the double Madden covers. It was all going on in the NFL space, picking up Madden from, it would have been PS3 then, so we're going a bit more forward in time. Game Station was about, it was, what a time.
The history of the New England Patriots as told by PlayStations. Is that as far as we're getting now? But just you mentioned there in your story, obviously the the experience of the Patriots in London. It was really funny last year going to Harrow, which I didn't know was Winston Churchill's old stomping ground. And then when
Yes.
Drake May was like, "Oh, New England Patriots, England," and I'm like, as an Irishman, I'm sitting there being like, "What fucking idiot would have supported the word England in it?" You do know that the Patriots of New England was the name of the American revolutionaries who fought against King George, who fought against the crown. But I was like, nah, I'm thinking about it too much. My Irish willingness to not like, but at the
But
same
I
time,
found out like 2 years later, because obviously 13, I think we did American history when I was like 15. So a year or two later, and I remember even in those moments being like, "Oh, this is going to be ironic. I'm going to get told we're going to throw your tea in the harbour every time that every time I'm going over there."
I feel like I'm listening to you try to audition for TED or something. You know, it's at the harbour. And it's funny as well because I remember when I was in college, so I started watching the NFL in around 2013, 2014, which is when I was around 14, 15 years old. It took me a while to finally select the Patriots as my team because, but like yourself, the way that you didn't want everyone was thinking or assuming you were some Tom Brady fanboy, I was like, nah, man, the bandwagon thing is be to support the Patriots right now. I'm gonna be different, man. I'm gonna try every other team and see if there's something that fits. And the problem is, I like Boston sports too much in general.
Mm.
But
We're
so
different in that sense as well, isn't it? Which is interesting.
yeah, it is. But it was just interesting because when you were referring to the whole England New England thing, eventually the first thing I bought was this woolly hat, and you know, like the woolly hats have like just they would say New York if it was the Giants or
Yeah.
Denver if it was the Broncos, so it was said New England. So I was there sitting on a Dublin bus going to college, at 7 o'clock in the morning, and some fella said, yelling at me, "Why are you wearing a hat with England on it, you bastard?" I'm like, "It's New England. It's New England. It's I'm not from, you know,
We're on the
whatever."
same team there, mate. Do your history.
And we were just going past a part of Dublin called Dorset Street. It's spelled the same as Dorset, but for some reason we pronounce it
Philip
Dorset
Dorset.
Street. Yeah, well, for some reason, I don't know why, but for this particular road in Dublin, is pronounced Dorset Street. And there's a bar called the Old Triangle, which is known as being a spot for a lot of people who wouldn't have positive opinions of the British Empire. For example, the hunger strikers from the 1980s are painted in a mural outside, and it's known for particular people hanging out there. So I was going past that part of town, and someone yelled at me. I was like, "Fuck, I'm in danger here." But no, it was fine. I guess obviously your link to the team obviously is much more European flavor, I think, because based on the fact that the Patriots have played in London, you and obviously it was more difficult to really pay attention to 2008, 2009 as it is now because of the changes in media. Whereas for me it was different. I followed the league for maybe 2 years, but like I was already a Red Sox fan because I followed baseball, and then I really landed on it the year of Super Bowl 49 when we beat the Seahawks. In the run up to that, I was like, yeah, okay. Because I knew at that point that I was going to, I had family who'd moved over to Boston. I was born in New York, funnily enough, but I've completely, and I don't know if I was about being born in New York. There's a picture of New York in every room of my house. So if you wanted to live in a house that was trying to, like, you know, develop somebody to be a Jets or a Giants fan, it would be here. Like my dad used to go to Jets games all the time. A lot of the people in my life who used to live in New York the same time my parents did are all Jets fans. And I was like, nah, no, screw that. But what really sealed it for me though is I spent 3 summers working in a summer camp in Boston, and it was with a non-for-profit. A lot of the kids we worked with are from the inner city, so it wasn't like with a bunch of rich kids. So we took them out and try to get them onto good pathways and, you know, have a bit of fun with them, keep them away from gang violence, all that kind of thing. But yet every sport and every interest had some kind of demographic pocket or some kind of split. So, you know, basketball was liked by these street kids, and soccer was only liked by the English and Irish staff who were coming over, and nobody liked ice hockey, and baseball was only liked by, you know, by these people, and Yu-Gi-Oh was liked by these people. Whereas there was something about American football which everybody bought into, and they weren't all Patriots fans. I was co-counsels with this obnoxious Steelers fan who's from Massachusetts. He's not from Pittsburgh at all. He's not from Pennsylvania. This obnoxiously loud Steelers fan. And as part of was working with that company, the Patriots Foundation do a lot of work with Crossroads for Kids, who's a company that I used to work with. And actually recently a lot of players came out to the camp and helped set it up. I'm like, that was my job a few years ago. Why is Why is David Andrews carrying a bench? I used to sit on that bench. So it's really funny seeing that on Instagram. But it was really nice. And Lawrence Guy used to put on these things where we'd all get on the bus, go to Gillette Stadium, all the kids would come in and meet a few of the guys, a few of the rookie players. And Lawrence Guy used to sign all the stuff and give the kids school books, which is very important for them because their families quite often wasn't able to afford it. And I always like the fact that the Patriots, and this is something that Robert Kraft has been big on, is that there is a community element to what the team is. So that sealed the deal for me. But the worst thing was, I at that point, I had a little cap and I got it signed by Lawrence Guy. And I lost it in a bet. And the guy who still has it is somebody I can't remember what the bet was. I think I bet that I beat him in a boat race. And it was like, well, what would you bet? Because I was a lifeguard and he wasn't. So what would you bet? See this hat signed by Lawrence Guy, Super Bowl winning edge rusher.
Yeah.
Do you want? There's no way I'm losing this race. I'll give that to you. And I ended up. He smoked me. He absolutely smoked me. He's not even a Patriots fan. Doesn't appreciate the fact that he has it, but he's like, I like the fact that it's navy. It goes well with my shirts.
No, I thought you were gonna say that like you were in a casino and then you lost it. But this story's cooler.
No, I was under 21. I don't even know if I was being allowed in casinos back then. So yeah, much less glamour to that one. But so yeah, I think that's both of our origin stories. We both come up from very different pathways, but I guess we're both here talking about the 4-13 New England Patriots. We're sticking with it. We're sticking with it now.
Just like Matt, well, obviously you're a bit luckier being a Liverpool fan, but Manchester United, I'm sticking with it now. People keep saying, why do you support them? You're from London. Like, but I've been supporting them when they've been awful. So we're now in that era with the Patriots, which is fine. And more so, like I was thinking about this when we were doing we were prepping. I was like, oh, my marriage to the Patriots was of that one game that I did at Gillette. The 43-40 against the Chiefs. That was great. That was like the 14-year relationship. We get married. And now, like any marriage, I've been there. It's going downhill.
Oh my word! It's love on the rocks right now. So you saw you go. I was like, that's one thing I haven't done, by the way. I've been to Gillette for events,
Well,
and I've been to
the stadium. We're gonna go anyway.
I haven't been to a game yet in Massachusetts. So you've been, and that was to the marriage. What did you wear to your wedding then? What was your ceremony outfit?
This my dad got it from this grey. It's like a limited edition Tom Brady jersey. I wore that with like one of the, what do they call it, Letterman jackets, like a Pats one. Yeah, it was cool. A guy bought me some clam chowder. It was heavy.
Sorry, I know you were trying to do a Boston accent, but that sounded like Pat Butcher. I'm sorry.
It's East London. To be fair, there's a similarity, isn't there, between some of the Boston words and East London?
Well, they are, but like it is New England, and I mean they are both like port cities, so I suppose it's not completely.
Yeah, but I wore that, and that was actually. I know we're going to come on to Mr. Edelman, but that was the game where I said to him when we saw him in New Orleans, I was like, "Oh, that was Patrick Mahomes' first loss," and he looked at me and was like, "Really?" But then when you know something, I was like, "Yeah, I think so," and then went back and checked, and I was like, "Well, I'm not going to call out have now Pat's Hall of Famer." But yeah, I guess he's played many big games. So why would he? It's probably not as special to him as it was to me being there. But that was, I mean, the 43-40 game. I remember we got the tickets for like probably $220, $250. And then the next year, they were like 500. It was the one where, when N'Keal Harry didn't step out of bounds. I can't remember. Maybe it was like a 17-7. It was low scoring. And everybody who went to that must have felt robbed because not only did we lose, but it was low scoring and cost more.
Right, you've set me up nicely to bring it on to Julian Edelman because as we're talking here, both of us are wearing our Julian Edelman jerseys. I don't have that many jerseys. In fact, I only have two. One of them is a Julian Edelman one. Where you have a collection, and you've bought yours of Super Bowl 53, which is of course the Super Bowl when he was MVP. But he is going to be inducted into the New England Patriots Hall of Fame. We both had the experience of, like you said, of being able to speak to him in New Orleans. We were both covering Super Bowl 59. There was a Fox Media event. And it was really nice because there was a big crowd around both Gronk. We both got to speak to Gronk. We'll talk about Gronk another day. I think we'll give him his time in the sunshine another day. But then we both went up to talk to Julian Edelman, which is kind of funny. Do you remember this? We had a lane, and I got in with my microphone, and then we kind of swapped. And then, or was it you?
Assisted me big time. It was like the Edelman to Amendola divisional round with the Ravens.
that's what it was like. That's what it was like. We're passing it off, trying to flick in the microphones and stuff
Trick
like that.
plays.
Yeah, exactly. So, but great guy, and what I really like about him is he gave quite insightful answers. He's not just a media person. I do genuinely think he does. He does have a great knowledge of the game. So, as somebody who I guess who had a greater look at his growth, coming from a 7th round pick to being somebody who, and it took him a couple of years. I was only recently watching his football life, and you forget you forget sometimes because you remember the Amendola pass, you remember the catch in Super Bowl 51, you remember the MVP performance, you remember the fact that he stuck around and tried to be as strong as he could in the Cam Newton season. What you forget is the fact in the first 3 years that it took him a long time to get into the team. He wasn't upsetting Wes Welker. He had a couple of special teams touchdowns. He stayed in the team. He was a quarterback coming out of college. No idea where it was going to be used. 7th round draft pick, but there was a tenacity there in the fact that he went to California every summer to try and throw in with Tom Brady. And in the end, if you asked ChatGPT to create the perfect wide receiver to fit in with Tom Brady, that really brought, as you said, that second dynasty up, that was the right man. So as somebody who, like I was saying earlier, had a greater sense of his growth into the game, what does Julian Edelman mean to the Patriot way?
I think he just epitomizes it in terms of like not coming from nothing, but like so just having to build a legacy like Brady did. But Edelman did it in a way that people forget that he had some snaps at corner in that second Super Bowl loss to the Giants. I mean, I'm pretty sure he was credited with like a forced fumble or a fumble recovery in the Ravens championship game. Prior to that, he was essentially. This is probably a compliment.
He was Cooper DeJean before Cooper DeJean. We had
exactly. They had the original white guy corner.
Yeah, exactly.
But when I say poor man's Troy Brown, I mean that as the biggest compliment. I mean, Troy Brown obviously was known for just doing that for everything throughout his career, but Edelman started as that and then transitioned into, like you said, from going quarterback in college to a wide receiver. And I think, like when you say about I pick up the same sort of in-depth knowledge from him and his answers, that clearly was how his career was built on, right? To take being a quarterback, learning the playbook, embracing a new position, being sort of probably learning from Wes Welker, but then building that rapport with Brady. And I think the thing that I can say most about Edelman in sports, some people just have that. I know it's cheesy to say clutch gene or whatever you want to call it, but he has that. We've seen a game-winning catch in the Super Bowl he ran the same route against Seattle, the catch against the Falcons, what he did against the Rams. He was just sort of there. Brady having to get off every 2 seconds. He was just his go-to guy throughout a good 5, 6, 7 year stretch. And yeah, it's just a Patriot way because there was just so many players like that who we could be here all day talking about people who've sort of overcome obstacles to make great careers. And I know you said we'll come on to Gronk, but even he's a guy, injuries coming out of college. Look at the career he had. So yeah, just super happy for him. I feel like genuinely, if anyone deserves to be in the Patriots Hall of Fame other than Tom Brady in the sort of 21st century Patriots, I would say it's Julian Edelman.
Yeah, and I think what's important to remember as well is, when Danny Amendola came from the Rams, everyone was expecting, okay, this is a WR1.
Yeah.
Not quite sure where Edelman fits in here, but actually it became a nice symbiotic relationship. And in order to do that, and look, how many times have we spoken to sports stars and American footballers, and we've talked about them? We've had a chance to be up close to them. There's some of them with egos the size of skyscrapers. I refer particularly to a specific quarterback who we saw at a press conference in Tottenham Hotspur Stadium last year before his head coach got fired. Not naming names, but there are some people who have egos unbelievably high. And it's so difficult to try and manage that, even with Bill Belichick and the fact that his way was always trying to take whoever's the biggest guy, whoever's the best guy, tear them down and try to find a way to build up again. So for somebody to take that situation, not necessarily see it as a threat, but as an opportunity, I think is actually rare in American sports than it is in some other games. It's probably more likely to see in Gaelic games or in soccer or anything else. So I think Edelman deserves credit for being able to do that, and also his seamless transition into being a media personality is very entertaining. I don't know if you listened to a podcast episode I did with Bill Burr; it was hilarious. So.
Do you know what I just thought about with Edelman, actually? Probably the best way to sort of sum up his career as a Patriot, you never heard any trade rumors. And when I say that, I mean as in Belichick is renowned for getting rid of people a year early, right? Did it to Logan Mankins when he went to Tampa Bay. Obviously, he was one of the nominees this year alongside with Vinatieri and Edelman to get into the Pats Hall of Fame. Was happy for Brady to go. Gronk was linked with the Lions and retired to get out of it, but Edelman never transpired. And like you said, he played through the Cam Newton year. And I feel like Belichick, that was one of his guys. That was sort of the football player who Bill Belichick, probably when he grew up being a coach, that's the sort of guy that he wanted on his roster. So that's probably the perfect compliment.
Yeah, there's probably a reason why Edelman gets away with doing all those Bill Belichick impressions, including in front of his face at the roast of Tom Brady's, because there's obviously enough respect there that Belichick is like, do you know what? I'll let you away with a punk. So look, I'd be delighted to see him enter the Patriots Hall of Fame. I'm not quite sure, obviously this is different to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So obviously, again, as our resident football and Patriots historian, there's a lot of players from this second dynasty or even the first dynasty, whatever way you want to split it up, who haven't necessarily gotten the nod because either people are fresher in our memories or they just have a greater media personality. Gronk and Edelman and Tom Brady obviously being in that category. Tom Brady getting into the Patriots Hall of Fame last season. So who else should we be giving their flowers to when it comes to the honor of being put in the Hall in Foxborough?
Yeah, it's tough because I would compare this Edelman getting in, like when you spoke about Wes Welker, obviously he was the guy who just sort of revolutionized the slot position, and weirdly I don't think he will get in, or because maybe one day, but maybe of course with the team like Ring of Honors and the Hall of Fames, it's not like first ballot, second ballot, all that sort of stuff. So maybe he'll get in a few years. But if I was Wes Welker, this sort of like summarizes that like, oh, I've been overshadowed again by Edelman. I don't know if he will get in, but he easily could. And I mentioned Logan Mankins earlier. He was one of the best linemen in Patriots history. He played tackle throughout his entire time at college and then was a guard from day one, which is where the Will Campbell comparisons have come in early with him. But Matt Light, who was Brady's blindside for 11 seasons, he's in the Pats Hall of Fame. 3 Super Bowls, 5 title games. So it just goes to show that just having that sort of extra thing, again, a Randy Moss, right? He's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame because he's probably one of, if not the best receiver ever. But he's not going to be in the Patriots one because unfortunately for him, he was on the 18-1 team and only played for 3 seasons. So I think like from the current dynasty, I can say that I've seen Devin McCourty is, hands down going to be there one day. Again, a guy who's just a Belichick guy. Got to be Matthew Slater, surely. Again, one of those guys where even when we saw him in Germany, like just the way that he holds himself. I remember even like, obviously it's the new age of media and people had their phones. I remember I had an issue with my tripod and I was holding my phone at him. And for anyone who actually knows me, as much as being content creator, I don't really like the whole like taking a selfie with someone or doing that. And even the way he sort of like glanced at me, I was just kind of like, oh no, he thinks I'm probably, putting this all over. Probably jumping in for a quick selfie with him. But yeah, Matthew Slater, again, these sort of guys who just epitomize the Patriot way. And David Andrews, I said to you obviously before we jumped on, like obviously the news has come out. I mean, to do what he did at the center position and be on those winning teams in the second half of the Patriots dynasty, you'd like to think that one day that he would surely be a shoe-in as well, especially again hanging around for some of the not so good years in recent years.
I definitely think that's a good point. And for anybody who didn't catch the news, David Andrews has announced that he is retiring from playing football. He said his final message to Patriots fans after announcing the retirement, I think on Monday just gone. And I think he's definitely worthy of a mention because, again, I'm going back to the experience of seeing them in Frankfurt, to talking to Boston media and Boston fans who have sort of had a more up close feeling to the Patriots post Brady, let's say. And he's a guy who, as team captain, as somebody of a veteran who of those Super Bowl winning years, has had to still try and put on the brave face and answer to the world was everyone's asking what the hell is going on. And I think the mentality that, and people say, well, people don't really give a shit about what the media is saying, what the media do, and what the media questions ask you. The mentality that when it's day after day, when it keeps chipping at you and chipping at you and going, that's not an easy thing to do. And I thought he always put a brave face on it, in fairness to him. So I hope he enjoys his retirement, and he's definitely a guy that could definitely we definitely look at in the future. Slight flashback, by the way. Here comes a slight tangent, and this is going to happen for listeners of the pod. This is going to happen a slight tangent.
We like tangent.
Remember you were talking earlier about how much you just could not. You wouldn't even talk about the Giants winning the Super Bowl.
Are you going to tell a story?
So last year, ahead of the Patriots playing in Wembley, the two of us went up to Harrow. We got an Airbnb in the Harrow area. I was like, grand. Right, two of us to stay here, and what we do is, grand, I'll go and have a quick shower, and I might as well put something on the TV to keep Skye entertained. And of course, it was the highlights of the Giants beating the Patriots in
the undefeated season, the 18-1 07, yeah.
And like, and I just know Skye more than I do doesn't like the Giants. Something about those Super Bowl wins is great at his personality, but he sat there and watched. Why did you sit there and just watch it? Why didn't you turn it off?
I remember you obviously like coming out of the shower. There was a play, 4th and either 11 and 13. I'm saying it like I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was 13, but it was a 4th and long, and we could have gone for it in field goal range. Obviously, this is when Gotskowski was a younger guy. Belichick's in his red hoodie, and he sends the offense out, and it was like an arrogance of like, we've already beat you in the final week of the season. We've put up silly amount of points. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? I remember you being like, are you still watching this? And then I was still watching it when you were getting ready. And then Brady obviously threw the touchdown to Moss. And I'm like celebrating, thinking it's going to be a different ending to the game. Oh. And yeah, the David Tyree catch. I mean, I know we got our Edelman moment. And I do genuinely feel like I'd love to know, like anyone watching, or just in general, when we talk to Patriots fans, especially this season, one thing I'd always love to know is, do people think that Tom Brady would have gone on to have the career that he did if he went undefeated that year? Like, you know, like, because surely your motivation at that point, it would have been a year prior to his ACL injury. You've just done something that obviously I say only the Dolphins had done. I mean, yeah, it was obviously a lesser league back then. I'm just being bitter. Yeah, it's, you know, it would have, surely that wouldn't have fueled his fire as much as given the drought of then losing another Super Bowl. And I know we spoke about all the other wins after that, but yeah, I don't know why I sat there and watched it, mate. I just love self-inflicted pain.
Yeah,
obviously.
It's the pain of it, obviously. As if being a Man United fan isn't enough. You had to sit there and just suffer. I'm like, I come out of it, it's like, why is he still watching this? But not only watching it, reliving every moment. I'm like, Jesus.
The last play where he throws like the best pass I've ever seen, to Randy Moss. Like a 70-75, and someone, whoever the defensive back was, gets his fingers in between. Like, if he caught that, it would have gone to overtime.
What if? You know, it's typical as Patriots fans. We've got 6 rings. We always moan about the one we don't have. How Boston is that? You know, just complain about the standards you're not hitting, even if you're hitting the highest standards.
As being robbed in the 05 at the start. Yeah, you know, we could have had 8. We could have had 9. Could have 9 if you'll know this. You were watching the Gronkowski one. Gotskowski missing the extra point, the 2018 against the Broncos.
Oh God,
AFC Championship game.
Yeah, don't. That's my game, and I'm like, no, because there's so much that sort of went wrong in that game, and all you had to do is just find a way to just press Peyton Manning a bit more. You know, he's basically the Zimmer frame. Just hit him. No, I couldn't quite get them, but another time when I did get under your skin slightly, because again, we all have teams that we see as big rivals. I don't the Giants and the Dolphins aren't on my list of top 3 teams I consider as heated rivals. They are on yours. Yeah. So you went so in New Orleans. I ruined a nice moment of you because what was it? You shook Danny Amendola's hand. I was like, I can't believe I shook Danny Amendola's hand. Oh my God! And I was like, you just shook the hand of a former Miami Dolphin, and you just the turn on your face.
I don't know why I thought you joked Dolphins legend, or maybe, but you definitely. I remember you saying like Dolphin, and I was like, what? I was like, don't ruin it for me.
You just shook the hand of a former Dolphins receiver, and it's onto Miami that we go for our next kind of news talking point, because it's funny, you know, we're in the AFC East. How many pieces of knowledge can we get from our rivals? Bringing in Stefon Diggs, a guy who has shown the talent that he's shown in Buffalo, might know a bit of ins and outs, find a way to, you know, undo Josh Allen after his great relationship with Josh Allen. Yeah, it's a nice idea to bring Stefon Diggs in, except that it's the main thing that a lot of NFL media is talking about at this time of year. The fact that he was on a boat in Miami, passing a bag of pink crystals to a bunch of women, and I think Cardi B was on the boat as well. My favorite thing about the video, though, is in the middle of it, one of the women just turned and looked at the camera. It's quite obviously filming it. So to me, that was more the biggest error of judgment is to be in a situation where people are filming you and will probably post, and that's exactly what happened. Um, but I don't know how much of this you've seen. Like there's so much drama around Diggs and Cardi B and the fact he didn't turn up to OTAs, and people are talking about it a lot partly because there's nothing else to talk about, but partly because Mike Vrabel demands a lot of his players. It's about what are you doing on the field and off the field. I think the quote from Mike Vrabel last week is making good decisions on the field and off the field. I even
Yeah.
had Scott Zolak, who calls Patriots games on the radio, coming out and suggesting that he's hearing that Diggs could be cut, and that was seen by some people analyzing the media that was the Patriots basically going in the airwaves and being like, get your ass up to Foxborough or else you ain't getting your money. And sure enough, we begin OTAs this week, and Stefon Diggs is practicing. So, I don't know how much to really read into this. It's funny to see player passing around supposed pink crystals on a boat in Miami with a bunch of women. I'm sure there's plenty of people looking at that wishing they were him, and plenty of people looking at that wishing that he was putting more work towards making
Yeah,
the
before I
Patriots a
rant
better team.
about him, now everyone's going to think I'm jealous because, like you said, that could have been me.
Uh,
How am I not party with Cardi B?
yeah, I know, but like that, Miami's a good city as well.
Yeah, we had a
Much
good
you,
evening out there. We
we
were
did,
behaved
yeah.
though, weren't we? But
We were, yeah. Let's leave that before because we will eventually be previewing a couple of games in
yeah,
the Patriots and the Dolphins. But in terms of how much we should care about Stefon Diggs partying in Miami during OTAs are voluntary. Let's not forget that. But
yeah,
by the time we get to September, is it something we're going to care about? Because if he plays well, we're not going to give a shit. If he drops a key pass and the Raiders win by 3 points, and Tom Brady is there in the stands cheering as his team was
mm.
won, being the Raiders, we're going to be like, well, Stefon Diggs obviously isn't putting in all the effort. Look at what he was doing on that boat in Miami. So I don't know how much what way to read into this.
I just feel like this is going to sound. I mean, I've done some silly things at my age, but he's a veteran now. He's 31. Like, pull your finger out of your ass. I'm going to go full Mickey Flanagan. Like, I don't know. This is just like, I just don't. I know they're voluntary, but I'm like, you're being paid a shit ton of money. You're on a new team. It's a young team. Like you said, he's been brought in to sort of like help Drake May develop mainly. The same way that he did with Josh Allen. And obviously, in that receiver room is so wide open as well with a lot of young guys. It's not the example you want to set. And like you said, look, we could fast forward 3 months and the Patriots start like 3-1 and he's done well, and then you don't think about it. But these things play into, let's be honest, it's a franchise which is still sort of in transition rebuild. And when you bring in these veteran guys, you want them to lead by example. And it's just not. And the thing that's more annoying for me is that I'd spoke to a friend of mine before we were linked to signing a veteran. And I was like, I don't want Diggs. I said, I'm not saying the talent's not there. It's not even about coming off of the ACL. I said, there's just some character flaws where, like, I don't know, he's not the veteran that I think would lead a room. And that's why I think him being in Houston was a better spot, because you had some other established guys there. But on the Patriots, he has to be the guy. So, you know what, mate? I hope, like I always say,
Yeah.
just prove me wrong. Prove me wrong, well, and then that's fine.
I think you bring up a couple of good points. Firstly, I mean, because the Patriots are a team in transition, and we've seen, and Stefon Diggs is come in, and a part of bringing in a veteran, especially when you have a lot of young players, in particular that wide receiver room is a lot of young players. We saw how many offensive players the Patriots drafted last year and again this year. Like, why did James Milner stick around Liverpool for so long? Because he taught the young lads how to be professional. And when the young lads are off buying their Range Rovers and not putting in the effort in training, they can point to look at the 36, 37-year-old guy who's running rings around them in training and be like, well, that's how you be professional, gentlemen. And this is what Stefon Diggs is deciding to spend his time doing in the first week of OTAs. If it happened last week when it wasn't OTAs, there wasn't anything going on the field, then I feel like I'd care less.
It's just a weird time to do it, right?
Yeah, it's timing. It's not the actions. It's not where he is. It's not who he's with. It's the timing. That, like, I don't care what he does. When he's not on the team, so long as it's legal, I guess. But so long as he turns up and he's fit to play, because as well as that, he's still recovering from a knee injury. Like there's still rehabilitation needs to be done.
Maybe that's the
And
crystals, mate.
well, that's what it's for. It's like, so I suggested someone like Chinese medicine or something like that. You put these crystals shall bring the spirit into you. Oh God. But
That'd be great. If he goes off for over 100 yards and 2 touchdowns on week 1,
sorry, could you imagine the testing that they'd be doing on him if he ran for like 3 touchdowns or something like that in the first week? There's gonna be like not even like anti-doping agency. The DEA is gonna be on his ass. Like, sorry, pal, in here test, and it'd probably be grand, but just image counts for a lot in American society and in the NFL. But I don't know. Look, by the time we get to September, we mightn't care, but there's still a lot to happen. But another question I have with Stefon Diggs just in general is, okay, the pitch was bring him in, works in the Josh McDaniels setup, works with the new young guys, helping them out, works with the new quarterback, tries to bring them to the next level. Wasn't that the pitch when he went to Houston last year? And like that team didn't take a step forward. I know he had an injury to deal with. The Houston situation is different to New England, but I'm not convinced.
I agree, because obviously when I was saying about, obviously Nico Collins, phenomenal. Tank Dell, unfortunately, had suffered another bad injury. But yeah, Diggs was walking into a good room. Like at the moment, we've got Kyle Williams, who's been drafted. We keep seeing the videos of Drake May hitting him long, like somehow even underthrowing him. That's how quick this guy is. And then I think the Patriots media have been quite smart, and like you said, doing the whole "we could cut you," but then it's come out about the undrafted free agent Efton Chisholm. He's like, they're saying, it's going to be hard for him to not make the roster. So there is also some things where they're putting some nice things out. They're like, we got these young guys, who could we do it? And maybe it's like weird. I know it's not very Boston media way, but it's probably like, come on, Diggs, we actually want this to work for you. Like, you are the only veteran. Like, you'd have to blow this completely.
Yeah, we're rooting you on. We're not trying to find a way to cut strips out of you like we are with the Red Sox right now.
Would have done for years with plenty of other players. Like, guys who it doesn't work out. Like, even a guy like Ocho Cinco was there, great receiver on the Bengals. And then even he's admitted that he struggled with the playbook. But it was like, he's not Randy Moss. Get rid of him. He's gone. So, but the narrative's changed now because we know, crap, there's no one else on this team. So I hope he could just pull it around. But yeah, I've just never seen him as a leader. And I think the point that you brought up there about, I didn't even think about how he was supposed to do that when he went to Houston. He didn't really do it, because I think Nico Collins is just phenomenal talent on his own. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe he just goes to, like, Football Manager. You could send him on a leadership course. Vrabel, just send him on a leadership course.
Well, that's what I used to do in Crossroads in the summer camps.
You do it.
I'll go over. I'll teach him how to swim. He probably knows how to swim.
I'll go, because I need to know how to swim. So teach me how to swim and him how to be a leader.
Do you not know how to swim?
No. Or ride a bike.
Ride a bike is one thing, because you can just get the tube, but you don't know how to swim.
I almost drowned in a boat in Orlando when I was like 7.
You live on an island.
I know. I'll learn. I tell you what, if Stefon Diggs goes over 100 yards in week 1 and a touchdown, I'll get myself swimming lessons and I'll buy him a crunchie.
The fact, I don't even know why those two things line up, like swimming lessons and honeycomb chocolate. I don't even know what the correlation is.
Imagine swimming in the pool of honeycomb. That'd be nice.
Well, look, I think we're getting more into the shallow end of our podcast now. So I guess we're about to wrap this up. Next week we are going to have a quick or a spin through the Patriots schedule and any more talking points to happen between then and now. But this is history, I guess. If this actually does turn into something, this is history. If this doesn't turn into something, it's something which we'll be, having a chat about in 10 years' time to be like, do you remember we did that? Do you remember we did that podcast thing? What was it called again? Pat's Pals? Wasn't that dumb?
Well, let's hope it's the first part, but whatever happens, it's a pleasure. To talk to you, Shane, about the Patriots, talk with a friend about our team. We're in for, I think I know we'll come on to it next week, but I guess the closing thing for me is I genuinely feel like we're on to a decent season here.
Do you actually? Because so let's spend 30 seconds on this. Do you actually, like, how much hopes do you have that we can make the playoffs?
I think I'm 70% confident. I've got over the thing now of I wanted Vrabel obviously last year, and then we got Mayo. And I remember saying to you plenty of times in the off season of like, this just feels like we're trying to rectify a wrong. But I've accepted that that's fine in life. If you could just accept you made a mistake and move on for it, I think Vrabel's a great head coach. We were talking about Edelman and sort of the vouching that he's done and spending time with the team recently. And like we said, we'll come on to it. I think that the schedule is set up nicely for us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you agree?
I'm not quite so confident that we will actually make the playoffs. I'll be honest. Let's dig into that next week. I'm sure we'll find the time to do it next week. But for now, Mr. Skye Pank, thank you very much, and thank you for all of you for listening to Pat's Pals Podcast at Pat's Pals Podcast on. Try to say that 10 times fast on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. You will follow us there, and email patspalspodcast@gmail.com if you have anything that you want to say to us, even if it's just pure abuse. Screw it. Engagement is good. But for now,
I like that.
Thank you very much for listening to Pat's Pals. Sorry, I have an even better one. You know what I was saying earlier about pen pals? I could say, this is Pat's Pals signing off. No?
Hey!
Does that not work? For anybody who listened to the end of that, you've just gotten the end of our production meeting. Congratulations. See you next week.